Okay, so here we are in this lesson. We're going to go over the edit page, and we're just basically going to get started by going over the interface a little bit, and then a lot of the basic editing tools. If you've ever edited anything in any program, whether it's Final Cut Pro or Premiere Pro, as you know, a lot of the programs work the same, but at the same time, being a different program, even though things are the same, they always tend to have something that's a little bit different. They work a little bit different way. They might have a slightly different name. And that's just kind of what we're going to cover here, just so you get acquainted with everything in Resolve as far as the edit page goes. Okay, so before we get started, I'm just going to give a quick overview of the interface of the edit page. And as you can see over here, this is where we have our media that we created. And again, we have our master bin here with all our folders, media, music, voiceover, titles, which right now is empty. And in the edit page, we can view this a little bit differently. We can either go here and view things as a list view, like this, where we can scroll over and see all the specs of the clip. As you can see, we can look at it in thumbnail view, which is probably the more popular view. And then we can also view this in kind of, you could say hybrid view, where it's a thumbnail, but it also shows some of the basic specs, such as, the clip name and duration, that kind of thing. But for now, we'll just leave it in the thumbnail view. Okay, and then we can always resize the clips here if you want to see a little bit more or less, so I'll just leave that like that. We can hide this folder view here to see more clips. We can also click on this drop-down menu here to expand and see more clips. This is normally helpful if you're like on a laptop, for example. Then we have the effects tab, which is basically, where we have things like our video transitions, like dissolves, your audio transitions as well, a lot of the pre-made titles that you can go through, generators, such as bars, a solid color if you're creating any sort of backgrounds to anything, and then some of these effects here as well that you can kind of add in there. But typically you're just in the media pool, you're here, you have our canvas here, our inspector, which should be another very familiar thing that you've seen before, basically where you can go in here and, zoom in and out of clips. Let's say I go here. Of course, you've seen this in basically any editor, zoom in and out, reposition clips, for example, rotating, all that kind of thing. Cropping, composite modes, or blend modes as they're called, opacity of clips. All of that stuff is done here, as well as audio, effects, transitions. All of the inspector attributes live under this menu. And then metadata, which is just exactly the same as what we saw in the media page. Basically clicking on a clip and you see all the specs here. And then again, we have this little expand window in case you want to see more information about any clip. And then of course we have our audio mixer. And as you get more audio tracks, this also expands out, which you'll see as we start putting something together here. So typically you do want to have this on. Usually the inspector's on there as well. And so then as we move down here, you'll see the typical stuff as well. The stop, play, pause button, forward. Same thing as hitting the space bar when you're typically playing a clip. See space bar pauses as well. And then of course the J, K, and L keys, which are used in every editor, work as well. J is rewind, space bar, K is to pause, and then L is to forward. And then of course if you tap it a couple times, it speeds up. Tap it again. Now we're going 2x, 4x, 8x, for example. And then this is basically, again, what we typically use as a keyboard shortcut when we're editing something. I for in, O for out. Okay. And let me clear that with Option X. And then of course we have our viewer here, exact same controls. And so let's jump right in, because the other little tools here we have to have clips for to see what's going on exactly. So the first thing I'm going to do actually is throw a little music in here. So I'm going to grab this guy, and then I can see that I just want to kind of make this about 30 seconds. And so I'm going to look up here because I want this to be about 30 seconds. And if you hit the arrow keys, right arrow, and left arrow, we add 1 frame at a time. And then I will hit O, which is already marked. And then I'm just going to drop this in. There we go. And you can always expand to see a little bit more information, which I always like to do. And what's great about this, it will not only give you more information, but you can go in here, for example, and then title the tracks, music, lock the track here, solo, mute. It tells you how many clips are on this track, which is actually very useful once you start getting more complicated grades. And then of course you can see the waveform, which is also very helpful. And then the 2.0 tells you what kind of track this is. So this is a stereo track. If you ever want to go in here and change this, you can simply right click, add a track or change track type to. But when you do add a track, you can add mono, stereo, 5.1, surround, 7.1, or the default, which is adaptive, which basically means that whenever you drop something in, Resolve detects what that audio file is and it automatically sets it as like it did in this situation. It knew this was a stereo track, so it just created a stereo audio track. Okay, so now let's go into the media tab here, and I will just start dropping a couple clips in. So let's say we start off with maybe this guy here. And again, I for marking in, O, and then we can simply either go to this window and insert, overwrite all the different kinds of edits, and it drops that in. And then let's see, we'll not going to create a masterpiece by any means today. I'm just going to drop a couple clips in. So let's say we go with this one next. I, O, and then you can also just drop this in like this. Scroll back and space bar to play. Okay, and then I can always back here, and I'm just going to drop in a couple shots here. Let's say now I go. Just going to drop that in. And again, I, O, oops. So in this situation, for example, these initial clips had no audio to them, so I just dropped them in. But now that this clip has an audio track, we see these two different icons, video and audio. So if I want to drop this in, I can simply just grab this video icon and drop that in. Same, if I wanted to only bring in the audio, I could grab this and add that in. But all we want is the video track. And here we go. You can see as things are coming together. Okay, and then a couple of commonly used functions here are, of course, zooming in and out. So you can always either hit this here to zoom in and out, which is honestly it's not the easiest way to do it. You can also hit Command plus, Command minus, or if you have a mouse with a scroll wheel or you're working on a laptop with a trackpad, another useful function is to hold down the Option key, and then you can use that to zoom in and out while holding down the Option key and moving up and down on your trackpad or scrolling up and down in your mouse wheel. And then another very useful tip is Shift Z shows you the entire timeline. So you might be like this, it's completely zoomed out. Shift Z, you pop right in. Okay, and then of course, grab this. I can make it a little bit longer. And then let's say I grab something like this. In, out. I can always apply it again. Grab this here on the upper track. And let's watch through that. Okay, and if I want to delete that, I can just select that and delete. Okay, so here we go. Let me add another shot here very quickly. Let's say I add this guy in. I, O, Drop that in, and then let's say I want to slow this down a little bit. Right click, change clip speed, and I'm just going to drop that down to 50%. Spacebar. And another really easy thing is, let me command plus. You can always easily add a fade in and fade out. If you zoom in and see this little icon here on the left, you can always grab that and drag it 15 frames, and that will create a fade in. And then the same thing on this end if we wanted to create a fade out. Or we can just drag it right back. There we go. So let's say we wanted to start off with a fade in. And the same thing, by the way, exists with the audio. I can grab this to create a long fade in. Okay, so those were some of the very basic tools. Again, if you're coming from another editor or you've edited anything before, whether it's even iMovie or Final Cut, Avid, Premiere Pro, I'm sure a lot of this stuff looked familiar. In the next lesson, we're going to go a little bit deeper into it and cover a little bit more advanced editing functions that live in DaVinci Resolve. So I will see you there.